Hey everyone, welcome back to Branded and the second episode in our Brand AF series, the alignment formula. So, I wanted to drop this episode before the holiday rush begins. Typically, I air these on Wednesdays. This is happening earlier in the week because whenever you have the time this week, feel free to check in with this. This is something that's perfect for end of year and perfect if you've been feeling a little bit like rushed or overwhelmed or just a little chaotic this season. So, last week we talked about aligning our calendars and how like the subtle chaos in your calendar can quietly drain your energy and your focus and your leadership, honestly. And once you start cleaning all of that up, something interesting happens. You realize that your calendar was only part of the issue. The other part of the issue was your boundaries. But before we dive into boundaries, as promised, I want to give you guys a recap of the check in that I did with my own calendar. Because this is something that I do at minimum yearly, and it might even be quarterly. It just sort of depends the ebb and flow of my business. So, what I realized, all of the things in my calendar were actually organized pretty nicely, but I was missing a really key component: CEO time. It's what I call CEO time, time that I dedicate to my own business, right? I had all of the like correct booking settings in place where, I had only specific days and times where I was allowing client calls, whether that be new clients or existing clients. I had buffer times between my appointments, which is really necessary. And I even had creative and like free time blocked in throughout my weeks. But what I did not have was CEO time. Sorry, my dog's over here, making sure she's not getting in trouble. What I realized I didn't have was CEO time. And this is time that gets you like into your business dedicated to refreshing offers, refreshing your resources, looking at your automated emails, updating your website content, right? It can be a number of things. So, what I've done now, because I did this check and I realized, okay, I've got the majority of my calendar really aligned to my energy, to the times that I want to be on versus off. But what I did not have was time dedicated to my own business. I was just sort of squeezing it in wherever I could find the time. And what ends up happening more often than not is you don't find the time. So, 1 week becomes 2 weeks, becomes a month where you haven't checked in with your business. And that can be a problem. That's where you have broken links that you don't know about. That's where you have outdated emails that you don't know about, all of these things. And they happen to all of us. So there's no judgment. And I don't feel badly about it because now I know about it and I can make the adjustment. So what I've done now is I've blocked out time every week for me to simply just log into my back office and do a little like refining, editing, playing. Like it doesn't always have to be work related. I mean, it's work, but it's like it can be playful too. It doesn't have to be super rigid. It's basically whatever my business feels like it needs right now in this moment. So I'm excited that I was able to find that opportunity within my calendar and also to recognize that this work that I have been doing with my calendar has really been working. It's been sticking, it's been sustainable. I take my client calls only 2 days out of the week. I do my podcast recording on certain days of the week. I have my creative and free time built in on certain days of the week. I mean, and of course, I have other responsibilities outside of my business that I'm scheduling into there. And what I came to realize was I just left no room for my own business. So now that I've put that into my calendar, I'm really excited to see how that transitions moving forward. So if you haven't already done like the calendar alignment work that we talked about last week, go do a check in, right? Go check in with your calendar because today's episode about boundaries builds perfectly with what you'll be doing. So you can kind of do like a twofer, right? Last week's episode and this week, do it, go look at your calendar, and it's going to be immediately impactful. All right, so let's talk about boundaries. Our calendars can be perfectly organized on paper, right? On paper, digital, wherever it is. Yet it can still be run by everyone else's expectations. And I'm not talking about the dramatic kind of expectations like your parents wanted you to be a doctor, but you're an entrepreneur instead. I'm talking about the expectations, like the everyday ones, the behind the scenes sort of rules that you have put in place for your business that are quietly teaching people how to treat your business. So, if you remember one thing from this episode, it is this: you teach people how to treat your business by how you treat your time. So, what's the natural next step after looking at your calendar, right? You got your calendar in a place where it really feels like it respects your time. What's the next thing that we need to be doing? Well, you'll start noticing patterns that you'll see your boundaries are really being tested. So your calendar can be really aligned, but there might still be these areas where your boundaries are being tested and maybe you haven't even recognized it yet. These are things like you get on a client call and it runs way longer than it should because you didn't even set an end time. Now, I'll be honest, I have plenty of client calls where I set aside an hour and it ends up being 2, but that's usually because at the beginning of that call, I say, hey, I don't have anything else after this. I understand this is going to be like a little bit of a bigger conversation than maybe we set time aside for. Do you have the time for it? Yeah? Okay, let's go. Let's dive in. And we sort of make that commitment at the beginning of the conversation versus me sitting here going, oh my gosh, like they just won't stop talking. I got to get off this call. It's never like that. So you really have to set the expectation of like, I only have 30 minutes to have this conversation. Let's dig in. Or, hey, I've got 2 hours. My afternoon's free. What do you have to talk about? Let's dig into as much as we can. Set the expectation. And if you don't, you'll start noticing that this boundary gets crossed quite often. Another way you'll see this is messages will just sort of pop up on your phone outside of your working hours, which is fine, right? Anybody can message me at any time of day. The boundary is that I'm not going to respond to them until I'm ready to respond, until my energy is ready to respond, till I'm ready to do something about it. And especially if it's outside working hours, I have no obligation to answer that message with any kind of response. Now, if it's within business hours and I'm really busy and I can't get to them until maybe 24 to 48 hours later, I'll give a courtesy message of, hey, thanks so much. I'm going to get back to this soon and I'll let you know, whatever. But when you have messages coming in at all times of night and you're replying to them, that is you tearing down your own boundary. Don't do that. Another way you'll see this is feeling like you're always on, always. Even when your calendar is like, hey, free time, it's Sunday, we blocked it out, you're not doing any work. Yet somehow you feel like you've always got to be on, so you're always on your phone or you're always on the computer. This is knocking down a boundary. So these kinds of things, they aren't scheduling problems, right? So you see how the calendar alignment is one thing, but the boundaries are a whole nother thing. It's the support for the alignment that you just did, right? Don't sabotage the work that you just did on your calendar to make it so intentional. So this isn't a scheduling problem. This is a boundary problem. And most of the time, it's not because you're bad at setting boundaries. It usually is because most of us weren't ever really taught to build boundaries into the structure of our business, right? We think about boundaries as it's like a very personal thing, but boundaries are for your business just the same. And this is where I want to do a little bit of a reframe around boundaries, because setting boundaries for your business, it does not make you cold or firm or unavailable. No, it is about designing your day to fit your capacity. Your booking rules, your buffer times, your office hours, your communication expectations, all of these are invisible signals that you are pinging out to the world saying, this is how I operate my business. This is how I respect my time. This is what leadership looks like here. So what are you projecting, right? If you don't design these rules intentionally for your business, other people will design them for you. And usually it's in a way that benefits them. not you. You have to be in charge of your own boundaries. There's a couple places that the breakdown of the boundary wall really tends to take place. And these are really common. I see this in well-established businesses. It's not just for people just getting started. This happens to everyone. So a couple places, a couple like red flag zones in your business that you want to pay attention to when it comes to boundaries. First, booking rules. I know we already talked about this last week, but that's how important it is. If someone can book you, let's say, super early in the morning when you don't actually want to have that call, that's a problem. If someone can book you in a late afternoon when you've been completely depleted by the day, that's a problem. If you have back-to-back calls without any pause or buffer time, that's a problem. Your business is quietly telling people, my availability matters so much more than my energy when you operate in that way. So instead, your bookings should reflect when you're the most present, when you do your best thinking, and when clients are going to get the best version of you. And this is not selfish. This is incredibly responsible of you because it means you're giving your best self at every interaction. You don't need to stretch yourself too thin for the sake of like being nervous that this client's going to leave. Let them. Your capacity to deliver and show up as the best version of you is way more important than a demanding client who doesn't get it. Another place that this sort of like breakdown of the boundary wall will happen is in your buffer times. Buffer times are not luxury. They are an opportunity for you to recover between tasks. Because without it, you'll have calls that are like bleeding together. You'll have decisions that are sort of stacking on each other and you're not really able to compartmentalize like, okay, I was making this decision for this client, I was making this decision for my business, and everything just sort of gets a little bit jumbled. And on top of it all, your nervous system never gets a reset. That's terrible. That's terrible for your body, for your cortisol levels, for your mental like health. You need to be able to have a little bit of a reset, a little bit of a like 10-second take a breath between your tasks if you expect to show up as your best self. Without this kind of boundary, it's the breakdown happens faster than you'll ever be able to notice. And then you'll just be sitting there spinning, thinking like, what the hell? Why am I feeling so exhausted at the end of the week? With a boundary set in place, you have buffer times between your calls. Guess what? You're going to show up so much more grounded to that next phone call. You're going to think so much more clearly, and you're going to stop carrying the client's energy from the previous call into the next call. I mean, let's be honest, not every client call is like rainbows and unicorns. Sometimes they're difficult. And if you're carrying that energy into the next one, that's not fair for that next person, and it's not fair to you. Your calendar, if it has no breathing room, your business will always feel rushed, no matter how successful it is. It's just the nature of it. You will feel rushed. The third place that this tends to show up, this breakdown of the boundaries, is in your office hours and your communication expectations. So if clients don't know things like when you respond, how you respond, or what's urgent versus like, oh, this is just a normal conversation, they'll assume everything's urgent, right? Boundaries are not about ignoring people. They're about creating that predictability of when communication can be expected. And that predictability will be what builds more trust. It's not going to create distance. It creates trust. And it also shows you leading by example, because guess what? Your boundaries, your healthy boundaries that are creating trust and letting people know this is how I treat my time, so this is how you need to treat my business. Guess what? They see that. And that becomes a template for how they set their own boundaries and how they treat their business and how they allow clients to treat their business. It's always going to be a positive result whenever you lead by example in this way. The last place that you'll sort of see this like red flag zone in your business where the breakdown of boundaries is happening is expectations around access. This one's a really big one, especially for people that have, let's say, like Voxer access for coaching, or you do like text message or Facebook Messenger. Basically, where someone can access you 24/7, you have to set expectations around it. This one can be very uncomfortable to do because it seems like you're so immediately accessible that it feels wrong if you tell them, no, you can't access me 24/7, even though this app allows you to do that, right? It can feel uncomfortable. Access often gets confused with value. They are not the same thing. Unlimited access does not create better results. It creates dependency, it creates resentment, and it creates burnout. Clear expectations will do the exact opposite. Your clients will feel held and supported. Your work will stay focused and aligned. You'll stay in this like leadership mode versus reaction mode. That's huge. And this kind of work, this work on your boundaries, it matters even more as your business grows. Because here's something that no one really says early on. The more grounded that you become as a business owner, the fewer people are actually going to meet you there. And that's a good thing. That is totally okay. Boundaries are your natural filter. They're the filter to weed out and capture all the people who actually respect your time, the ones who value your work, the ones who are aligned with how you operate. So this isn't about being rigid, right? Setting boundaries where no one can ever access you ever. This is about being very clear. Clear with yourself, clear with your audience, clear with your clients. This is when I can be accessed. This is when I'm going to be my best. This is when I'm ready to receive you and your information and what you have to say. Period. Be clear. So here's a simple little boundary check-in that you can do for yourself. I'm doing this for myself too. As we do the Brand AF series, I'm doing all of this work. Every business needs this work, no matter how long you've been in business. So ask yourself some questions. Where am I available by default instead of by design? Where do I feel tension or a quiet resentment in my own schedule? What rule could I put in place that would immediately create relief? That's your check-in. You don't need to overhaul everything at once. Choose one boundary, make one adjustment, one decision that honors your time. That's how this kind of work compounds, and it becomes the sustainable level ease that you want to feel in your business. This is the brand alignment formula in practice, right? Alignment isn't just about how your brand looks or sounds. It's about how it holds you. And when your boundaries are clear, your calendar will support you, your clients will respect you, and your energy stays intact. Your business stops feeling like something that you have to manage, and it starts feeling like something that you get to lead. So last week, we were talking about reclaiming our calendars. This week, it's about protecting it. Not with force, but with intention. Because every boundary that you set teaches people how to treat your business. And more importantly, how you treat yourself inside of that business. One boundary, one rule, one small shift that makes your business feel steadier. Huge, huge impact. So take last week's episode, take this week's episode, put them together, do that calendar work, set some boundaries, get really clear about when you want to show up, and you're going to feel that impact immediately. This like sigh of relief sort of comes over you, and it is beautiful. So I hope you enjoyed this week's episode. I'll see you next week for a brand new episode of our Brand AF series. We're going to be talking about how a chaotic backend system will eventually bleed into your client experience, aka systems and workflows. Sounds sexy, right? I'll see you next week. This is really powerful work. I'm glad you're here with me, and I'll see you soon. Bye.